Okay, good evening, everybody. If we could all rise, and we'll start our meeting with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move right into Superintendent report. Mike?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Just a couple of quick updates before we get into our budget discussion. Graduation's high on everybody's mind, and there's a lot of active discussions going on at the high school with students, with groups, with staff, and certainly with some families as well. And we really have multiple options that we're looking at, and the number one option would be that we have regular graduation. So that's still something we're holding out hope for. Obviously, there are some constraints that we have to work through if that's going to happen, and that all comes at the discretion of the governor. So in the current format where the governor's executive order precludes gatherings of more than 10 people at this point, we can't have regular graduation. But we don't want to cancel it out as a first option, because regular graduation is something that these seniors absolutely deserve. We're also looking at, high school administration is looking at a lot of other options, and we will do something that truly maximizes the senior experience as best we possibly can. We want to make sure we send these fine young academicians and scholars off to a wonderful life after high school, and we're going to try to figure out the best way to make that celebration happen, and put together something that is unique to them in this very unique experience of their senior year. One of those things is actually going to begin tomorrow night, and it's been coined Friday Night Lights, and our athletic department, along with actually Brian Beck, our football coach, came up with the idea, passed it on to John O'Donnell, our athletic director, and she really ran with it and worked with Assistant Superintendent Mike Bacatius, Jerry Taddeo, Joel Indelicato from our tech department, and they're going to be streaming seniors' names on the scoreboard, and also streaming that scoreboard live on our YouTube page from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock every Friday night from now until June 26th. And on the 26th, I think they're going to add a little bit to it, make it a little more special. So it's something I'm really looking forward to seeing, and another way to honor our high school seniors, Friday Night Lights from 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. Today, there was also a driving tour for the top 10 students of the class of 2020. It was put together by high school staff, led by Principal Lawler. Each of the top 10 students, culminating with our valedictorian, their houses were visited by a small motorcade to celebrate and recognize the tremendous academic achievement. I understand there was video taken and a lot of pictures, so we should be seeing a video montage of that experience going up on our pages shortly. But it was a nice way to recognize our top 10. And those of you that have attended in the past, Mr. Lawler does something pretty special with the top 10 at the awards night, and plays that music and really gets things cranking for our top 10. And he didn't want to give away that tradition completely, so he put together something that was equally as special, just a little bit different. Also, I want to put a shout out there to a real benefactor of our children. Tommy Corcoran, at his own expense and his own time, has put up signs on every single senior's lawn that says, "Congratulations, class of 2020." And it really was one of those things that just exemplifies what Tommy is. He's just a top-notch person for this community, just loves the kids of the community, does everything for them that he possibly can. And there's just another example. So Tommy, thank you so much. So for anything else with our seniors, stay tuned. There's an awful lot more that we're going to try to do and make this experience as spectacular as we possibly can. For the Board of Public's knowledge, Vision 2020 bids, There were 2 phases that were bid out at the end of last week, and they were opened this week. And those 2, the bids for those 2 phases are being reviewed right now by our school team and also by our construction management group and our architect. So we hope to get that vetted as soon as possible. And those bids that are acceptable and ready to move forward would be coming to the Board of Education for consideration and approval. We're really close, folks. We're really close to getting ourselves started on the project. So we'll come back to you as soon as possible, hopefully something at the next meeting if things are looking in the right direction. Also, as I've been announcing in the past, I want to just note food service meals are still happening up at the high school in the snack shack. Fred reported to me 2 days ago that for the month of April, we served 7,242 breakfast, lunches, and snacks. So a little over 21,000 meals. Just fantastic work by some dedicated folks. Obviously, leadership from Fred Callow, just a top-notch person to run that program. And a special thank you to Cindy Jennison, Liz Morgan, Kathy Schaefer. They do all the preparing of the food. They staff the snack shack. Just fantastic folks. Thank you so much for what you do for our families. Obviously, it's needed and it's greatly appreciated by all of us. Thank you so much. The online learning, I had reported last time how many sites that were visited. I just want to report that that does continue to grow. We're learning every day, trying to do better every day. We're going to begin turning our focus at some point in the near future on what our fall is going to look like. Obviously, we're at the edge of our seat trying to understand what the governor is going to ultimately want us to do, and also what the state education department will direct. But ultimately, we're going to need some guidance from boards of health. But I want to report to you in the last 4 days, over 148,000 websites were viewed through our online platform in the last 4 days. So there's a lot going on online. There's a lot of work there. So thank you very much, staff. Thank you very much, students and families. I know this is not what we anticipated our May and our June experience to be, but I know that everyone in this community can rise to that challenge. Robin, if you could give a quick update. Robin's been doing a lot of surveying of families and staff, and also has some information about some of our, without getting into a lot of detail, about some vulnerable students that we're concerned about. So, Robin, if you could just give a quick little update on our check-in calls to families, the family surveys, and our vulnerable students, please. You're muted right now, Rob.
Thank you. So at this time, as of yesterday, there were 829 children who were reached out to twice using our secretarial staff. As well, there were about 400 families that were contacted at the middle school and 490 at the high school. From that, we're using our nurses, our social workers, our guidance counselors, and our secretarial staff to reach out to those parents and check in and see how our families are doing. How are they doing academically? What types of support do they need? Then coming back and then providing that. At this time, my last check, there were 3 students at the elementary that we would consider vulnerable, 6 at the high school, and 6 at the elementary. Vulnerable in the fact that we have not received contact from them. Other children, we're providing whatever they need once we get to them, even if they are in some state of vulnerable, needing a Chromebook, needing paper copies, needing food, needing childcare support. So we are continuing to do that. The family surveys, we got back so far, we have 128 responses from the high school, and out of that 128 responses, there were some really good numbers. 99% of the families were reporting that they do have a device and can engage in the online learning. They are in Google Classroom, and they are accessing the teacher websites. They are submitting the assignments and have valued the tech support that we are providing for them. The same numbers at the middle school for the same topics. We had about 99% of the people responding back that they have online learning capability, and are accessing the classroom as well as the elementary building. There were 220 people at the middle school that responded, a similar number at the elementary school, and we're receiving similar numbers. Some of the feedback that we're getting is that families are very impressed with the Google Classroom, they're happy with the Google Meet, and they want more, and we're giving them more. So I think that's, if there's anything else, Mr. Brooks, that you needed me to? In district,
No,
we're responding. In district, I'd just like to note that we've done about 176 workshops to support our staff in this online learning. And that's just since March 13th.
176 workshops since March 13th. Well, that's fantastic support for the staff and for families and students too, so thank you.
I just have a quick question, because I've had some parents said the Chromebooks are broken. Who do they call and who do they contact to get them fixed or get new ones? Because I told them to email Mike or...
There's a tech support line right on the COVID page, so if they go on the COVID page, there's an email address there that they can send it to. Certainly sending it to Mike Bicazzi's would work also, but there's a link right on the COVID page. And
Okay.
Mike's got a system worked out with each school on how to make the swaps or make the fixes.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, I have a question to Robin. This is John. Hey, Robin, in those numbers you mentioned for the responses, I noticed that there was more than one email that went out at different times for asking for the survey to be taken. I took it the first time, not the second time. So the numbers you just stated, are they the combination of all of their reach out times?
No, that's just from the first round.
That's from the first round, okay.
First round. Mhm.
Are you encouraging people to take it more than once?
We're not encouraging them to take it more than once, but they're welcome to take it more than once. In the email, it was asked that if they hadn't taken it, so.
Okay. Clearly, I didn't read it.
That's okay. Actually, someone did email me and say that they had wanted to add something before they hit the submit button, and then asked if they could add that, and definitely.
The numbers are still good. I just was curious if how you were doing that.
Thanks, Ms. Heck, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
President Milazzo, that's all I have.
Okay, for the Ulster BOCES, there'll be no report. We had a quick Zoom meeting for one, and then the second meeting was canceled, but it was really just to conduct business and talk about the elections. So there really was no report to give for there. Karen, you want to do OU BOCES from last night?
Sure. OU BOCES, we had a meeting last night on Zoom. There was 21 delegates in attendance. Basically what we talked about was they're changing the last meeting, the June meeting, from June 3rd. It was originally supposed to be a in-person meeting. They're changing it now to June 17th, 7 p.m., and it'll be online. They wanted to make it after the budget vote and the Board of Elections vote. That meeting will look at the executive director, the approval of the new officers for the 2020-2021 school year, their budget. They're going to honor retired board members that are leaving. And they also want to know if our board and other boards have any kind of ideas for what they'd like to see as presentations for the program for next year. They also looked at, they're keeping a flat budget for next year. We won't see any increases for membership dues from them. Also, the NISBA convention is in New York City in October. They are not going to be holding any kind of hospitality suite this year in New York City. It's too early, but they are planning on going with that. It's too soon to tell, though, if people are going to be commuting to it or if they're going to be staying over in New York City. They also talked again about presentations. They really want input from the boards, what we want to see next year. Mr. Heck spoke. He was saying how great the districts have been and how they've been all communicating with the superintendents, talking about 4 times a week, and about all different kinds of areas: budget, instructional planning, graduation, all different topics. One of the things that came out of it, Terry Reynolds made a presentation, and she talked about the assistant superintendent. She meets with them weekly regarding remote instruction, and also she meets weekly with the principals. And she said that they've created a data base of a collaborative community of all kinds of shared documents so that people could look at. And she said the documents basically are from all the districts, grading documents, end-of-year activities, social, emotional learning, and crisis interventions, how graduation is being held, continuity of learning for plan for 5-4, collaboration of all districts, family outside, facility and remote learning, faculty and remote learning, kindergarten registration and what that looks like. So there's really a comprehensive list, which what I thought was wonderful is that you can see what other districts are doing, and there's no islands of isolation with districts or that feeling, so that we could share basically like a collective intelligence and get what's working well in other districts and ideas. The other big thing that came up is districts wanted to know what other districts were doing for graduation, and also the ballot. Ballot was a big issue last night. A lot of the districts are putting the library election onto their ballots. Districts wanted to know how they were handling that. Another district, they're talking about graduations. Some of the districts are looking at doing interactive live drive-by graduations. Others are looking at turning the parking lot into like a theater, where the graduation ceremony will be up in the front of the school, and there'll be parking spaces that the people will go into. And others, they're still getting very creative with this, and they're still hoping that there's direction from the state of what people can and cannot do. Let's see, anything else? I think that's pretty much. Yep. And the other thing that they all talked about was the budget phase in, and there's everybody's worried about the budget. We're all in the same place, all thinking the same. And basically where we're at and how we ended was the budget, we're basically planning for the worst and hoping for the best. And that's the best that we can all do, and hope for best for what works out for our kids. And this is probably going to be something that's going to span funding for the next 2 years. And that's pretty much the report for what they discussed. It was about an hour and a half, 2-hour meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Brooks, on the library, did we get confirmation on the library budget from what I saw that they have, we're fortunate that the library's not changing their budgets. I don't think they have to have a vote this time, correct?
But they do have trustees, so.
Oh, they do have trustees, okay.
Yeah, so they have made a request to be included in the ballot, so they will be included in the printing, yep.
So if we can't confuse the people enough, we're going to make it even more complicated.
Why not?
Exactly.
Yeah, and we'll speak to the new process for the budget vote and trustee elections when Rose begins her presentation for the budget. We infused it into that.
Okay, so let's move right to there.
Okay, Rose is going to pop it up on screen, but while she's preparing that, I'm just going to give a little opener. As the board knows, and those that were watching in the public realm, as we developed this, we started this budget on a zero-based line-by-line analysis. So every line started out at 0, and we worked with our business office, all of our departments, our buildings, our administrative team, and we built this budget from scratch. So every line is filled with the money that's needed based on several years worth of spending patterns and also budget requests. We are confident in keeping our budget to budget increase at 0. So there is no difference in the total budget from the 1920 school year to the 2021 school year. The budget we're proposing for the 2021 school year does keep all existing programs in place. And we are also very carefully watching what's happening with New York State and the federal government, because there is obviously, if you're paying attention, some gamesmanship going on between New York State leadership, the federal government, and quite honestly, New York City leadership. And we have built this budget based on the adopted New York State budget, and I'm committing to you as a Board of Education that if something does happen in some of the points that Karen just referenced regarding some catchment periods over the next several months, when the governor looks at the revenue stream, if there is something that changes with our state aid allocation, I commit that this board will be the group that will decide what we do. So we will come back to this board if there's a change in our revenue picture and discuss options, discuss priorities, and discuss directions going forward. So right now, the proposed budget stands as it has in each of the meetings that we have had as a zero budget-to-budget increase. The revenue picture is based on our state aid and other revenues, and Rose will go through all those details. And anxious and ready for the Board of Education to give us the final feedback and asking for them to adopt the budget tonight. Adopting tonight allows us to move forward with the balloting process, and we'll get into the details of the balloting process in just a few minutes. So without any further ado, I will turn it over to Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Can you just confirm that you can see my screen and hear me?
Yes, good to go.
Yeah. Okay, great. Silence made me a little nervous at first. Thank you very much. Before I begin going through the slides, I just want to thank Mr. Brooks for his leadership in creating this budget. He, along with the central office staff, really worked diligently to bring about a budget that really is fiscally responsible and really dove deep into what Marlborough needs. So if I could just thank real quick Sue Smith, Deb Pagano, Jackie Kitson, Michelle Landis, Cindy Storno, and Susan Campfield for helping us create this budget that we feel is very appropriate and is what we're asking you to adopt moving forward. So the first slide you'll see is our three-part budget. This is our required budget slide that we have to break our budget down into the three main categories of administration, program, and capital. Everyone has can see this on their screen, and they also, the board members, have a hard copy in front of them. We listed on the side the function code so you would know where that money was aligned to. If you add up our three columns, it comes to our $58.3 million proposed budget. So our projected budget, our allowable tax levy, as presented before, is a 1.91% increase. So it brings up to $36.3 million. Our anticipated New York State aid is just over $17 million. And as Mr. Brooks stated before, should anything with our revenue, including that change, we would certainly come back to the board for advice. We have a pilot of 1.2 million as well as appropriated fund balance at 3.4 million, which would bring our total projected budget to 58.3 million. And a note as far as our contingency budget is concerned, should we have to go to contingency, it would be a $58.2 million budget. This proposed budget does include our current programs that we have, as well as the athletic trainer, additional student clubs, and the summer program for the high school. As you've seen before, our major cost drivers, of course, salary and payroll, health insurance, ERS and TRS expenses, which we're projecting this year to be lowered somewhat, transportation, special education, and our debt service, which we have a slight drop in debt service moving into 2021. So the tax cap calculation, moving forward to 2021, our tax levy is $36.3 million, which is just over $600,000 more than it was last year. It's a 1.19% increase. The increases we've shown on this slide for Marlborough, Plattekill, and Newburgh are based on last year's assessed values. So If nothing changes, these are proposed increases. However, we don't know the changes in assessment values or equalization rates until later in the summer. So these are not finite numbers. These are our best guess based on the known variables that we have at this time. You know, this is something we talk about every year at this time. We're trying to project out what increases, if any, would be, but we're relying on last year's numbers.
Well, and on that, Ms. Mealy, if I remember correctly, in one of the executive orders, they've also extended some of those timeframes. So I think we're going to get those numbers even later than we normally do.
I think so too, and just speaking with the Marlboro assessor, getting those numbers, I think it's going to be a tighter crunch than it usually is.
Yeah, I got a feeling we're going to get those numbers days before the bills have to go out.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very tight this year.
Yeah. So as far as our budget vote and elections, our legal notices, our first one did go out to the Southern Ulster Times. We're required to do it twice, so it will run again next week. We are planning to do our postcard notification. We are in process with the agency that supports our budget vote normally, NTS, and we're working on getting, those postcard notices ready to be mailed. Our property tax report card will be submitted as soon as you guys adopt it, no later than May 22nd, so you'll see that later on the agenda. As far as Board of Education trustees, candidates can declare to Cindy Storno that they are a candidate for the Board of Education by email, letter. There are no signatures required for this election, but we do need notification by 5 p.m. on Monday, May 11th. We will also list the candidates alphabetically in the ballot, as is typical with our regular votes. We will have our budget documents available on the website. They need to be up there 7 days prior to the budget hearing, which we moved the board meeting to the 28th to accommodate that. But by the 21st, we'll have our required budget documents online for people to view. And we will have a newsletter mailed to all residents so they're aware of the budget and the information needed for them to make an appropriate choice. The budget hearing, as I said, is May 28th. You will be able to email questions, and there will be a link, a phone number link for residents to ask questions. And thanks to Mike Bacachis for tackling that as well. Our budget vote is mail-in ballot only. The ballots need to be returned by 5 o'clock on June 9th. They will be mailed in a pre-postage paid envelope. The library vote is included in our vote, and Cindy Storno has begun to work with the library to make sure we get their appropriate information included so that it can go out with our mailing. We also will be canvassing the ballots. Those are our election inspectors. We will be appointing inspectors to tabulate the votes. We'll be sending you that list on May 28th for approval, and we will begin counting the votes on June 10th. So just a couple of important dates. Today is our budget adoption meeting. Our budget hearing will be May 28th with a budget vote of June 9th, mail-in ballots only. And if anyone has any questions, they're more than welcome to submit them to Mr. Brooks or myself for review. And that is our presentation. Thank you very much. I'll exit out of here and pass it back to Mr. Brooks.
Okay, folks, any questions?
Hey, I have one question on the process for submitting the petition, or not a petition, but, you know, for board members or our board candidates. What about, it's very clear the process for submitting the sheet that's been distributed, but what about there was a form for campaign expenditures and reimbursements that I thought was typically part of documentation that's needed. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, well, John, and if in one of the board docs meetings from state ed this week, and I don't know if we got any further from our lawyers, but it appears that at this point, that's all up in the air. There's a lot of questions that haven't been answered yet on that specific, if you actually spent funds to campaign, on when those filings are going to happen. That's still all up in the air and when those are due.
Okay, because I
Right,
did
that
see.
was not included in the executive order, so.
Yeah, I did see some kind of question. Sorry for talking over you. I did see some kind of Q&A, and it said, it still had dates of May 11th, June 4th, and June 29th, which made no sense. So that's why I'm asking. So right now, if someone submits the candidate form, that's all that's needed, I guess.
Correct.
They really don't need to declare it to Cindy.
Well, they could just email Cindy, either or
Yeah.
they just email, as long as they email Cindy by 5 o'clock on Friday that they want to be on the election, they don't even have to do all they have to do is declare that they want to run, and they'll be added to the ballot, everybody that does so alphabetically, just by an email to Cindy Storno by 5 p.m. on Monday will resolve that issue. If anybody that has expenditures, because it's unclear, I would say at least do the last one, the June 29th, the last date one that's due, and cover it all on there, because, there's been no clear, the election law hasn't changed, but there's been no clarification on any of the others.
Right.
At least after the election's over.
But yeah, at the very least, keep the data for keep the data and submit whatever you have, and so that at least there's a record to it. But there is no clear rule on it at this point, so.
I do have questions on the budget.
Okay.
So which I had emailed Mr. Brooks and just asked for some clarifications. I had noticed on the budget, do you want the line number? The item number? Like for the BOCES, he's $11,500 less, and it was underneath the Board of Education.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of confused. Because, it's 1010-490-00-00.
Yes.
And I'm noticing on our budget that we just had, it said the Board of Ed's budget is $53,777, but on the comparison budget that I have, it's stating that we're $26,500, and that $11,500 came out of the Board of Ed's comparison budget. I don't know if you guys can see.
I think you're comparing apples and oranges. I can explain why that's the zero.
That's what I'm asking.
Yep, I can give you a perfect answer. There's never been an expenditure from the BOCES line that was attributed to the Board of Education, at least in the last 7 years. So it's a line that was just there. Maybe it had some historical purpose, but there's no use of it for years. So there's no reason to have it there. And going from a zero-based budgeting perspective, if you have a line that's not being used, you eliminate that line. So there's no purpose for it. That's why.
Correct. But, okay, so I'm kind of curious because it says total Board of Ed budget is $26,000, and yet on our new budget, it says we have a budget of $53,000. So there's a big difference.
Now, the number that you quote from the budget is the correct number.
Okay,
I
so
don't
we
know,
have
I think we might be talking apples and oranges. It's $26,500 is your budget. There might be other costs associated with board work that's on, are you talking about the three-part budget? I don't know what you're talking
Yes.
about.
I'm talking about the three-part budget. It says $53,777 for the Board of Education. And then on the
Right.
comparison budget, it's
Right, but a three-part budget is not, a three-part budget is an explanation for those three areas. It's not a spending plan. So it's apples and oranges. They're quite honestly, the three-part budget is confusing to everybody, but it's one of those things that's locked in law. You have to produce a budget, and it has to, a three-part budget has to be broken out into those three areas. The long and short purpose of it is also, if there is a contingency budget, a failed budget, it's, there's only allowable amount of increase from the administrative side. But that's not the spending budget. The $20,500 is the board's line, so.
Okay.
And that reflects what the board has very carefully and underspent as much as possible each year.
Correct. Yeah, because I was just wondering why it was such a big difference. All right, and the other one was central mailing, which is 1670490.
Yeah,
0600.
those expenses were pushed out to the appropriate departments and buildings, rather than having it centralized in one budget line.
Now,
And Joanne, before you go through each one of them, I think probably the best understanding, and we can go through them in more detail, but is when you do a budget and you start from scratch, you take and you're going to look at 5 or 6 years of historical data to see exactly what we do. So all year long, we have had to do budget mods throughout the years. So the idea with this year's plan that they did with going back to a zero-based budget was to look at what we've done every year for the last number of years and realign the numbers so that they match what we've been actually doing each year, which should hopefully, never going to eliminate, but will hopefully reduce the number of budget mods that have to happen during the course of the year, and make sure that we're capitalizing on the amount of aid that we can get by having expenses in the exact proper code so you get the best reimbursement on it. So I really, there's other than those, from my understanding from all the communications back and forth, that's what all of the modifications and changes were from last year to this year. And the reason we're really noticing is because they started from zero and built the budget up. Whereas in years past, we always went back to where we were at and then just kept doing mods every year.
well, correct. And I did notice, just to make it short, basically, like the high school was a $61,000 increase, but I also added up some of the things. And like you said, it was the spending, but what I don't understand is we took away, like it was earmarked for like art supplies, science. Now we just bolted into one big lump. So even at the middle school and stuff. So my question is, so the art department no longer has a budget, the science department no longer has a budget because they've all been zeroed out. Is that correct?
Yeah, you might be looking at an older version of it, but we do have things separated out. So the high school, I know that if Mr. Lawler, which I'm pretty sure he's listening, would be very happy to think that he has a $61,000 increase in his budget, but he knows from our budget process there's actually a reduction in the overall high school budget. So I can't go by the documents that you have in front of you, Joanne, because you might be comparing apples and oranges. But
Well, this is the comparison budget, and basically this is what you basically center the budget off of. So my question is, if we put in the high school $61,000 and zeroed out all the supplies, that
we didn't
means
zero
high
out all the
school-
supplies.
That's where I'm getting confused.
We haven't zeroed out supplies.
Hold on.
We
Let me
put
find it
together, okay.
Like there's textbooks, English textbooks, Marlboro High School, they zeroed it out, $4,500. Math.
Joanne, Ms. Reed, can I help you understand something, please? There has been a reduction in the overall budgets for all three schools, period. But the budgets absolutely reflect the true basic needs that each of the three schools has from a zero-based budget. So we allocated money based on true past spending patterns and current requested needs. So the budget that you have as a $58 million budget reflects exactly those words I just said. So there are changes. There are changes in lines. There are ups and there are downs. But now I am confident that this budget reflects a spending plan that's got backing to it from a building principal and a department and grade levels perspective. So it's not just a budget, it's also a spending plan.
Well, it's a lot of spending. But my other question now is the tax levy. why did we bring the tax levy up? I mean, at this point, with everything going on, our schools, we're saving money with not using all the electricity, the buses, gasoline for the buses, the students not being there. So my concern is there are so many people out of work, not getting money, can't collect unemployment, can't even get on unemployment, are not working, are not as fortunate as other people that are still getting a salary. I'm very concerned about our $58 million budget and bringing that levy up, because some people may not be able to afford it. Is there a way that the money that we are saving right now, which I had asked a question of, is there a way that we can put that back in the budget and relieve the levy? Or not do the levy?
I don't think we can do.
The levy up, which basically means we don't have enough income in our town, correct? To support our $58 million budget. That means we don't have people actually living here or businesses to support it, so that's why we're bringing the levy up. Is that correct?
No, the levy is based on the tax cap. So the tax cap is a calculation every year, and the allowable tax cap was 1.91%, which amounted to that $679,000 or so dollars of levy increase. It is this body's job to decide on exactly what you're asking. So if we reduce the levy, we will need to increase some other line as far as revenue goes, or decrease the same corresponding amount in spending. So, let me finish. If we were to find other revenue sources, which this board knows was the source of all the miles that I put on my vehicle as I drove around to lobby like crazy for additional aid for this school district, and was, I believe, making some very good progress. Unfortunately, the budget got interrupted by a worldwide pandemic. So we are right now at a steady and level aid perspective from New York State. In order to keep the budget as it is in this new year of a zero-based budgeting, I would have loved to have gone less than the cap. But I don't know that that's the wisest thing from a fiscal perspective, and my recommendation is not at this point to reduce the levy. If we get into the months of July and August, and before we set the tax rates, we find that our fund balances are healthy enough that could support, if there are revenue problems because of a battle between the state and the federal government, that we need to make some adjustments, I think that's the appropriate time to do it. But I think that that's powder we need to keep dry. If we use that powder now, we're going to have a problem if we do come to a federal-state standoff that reduces our aid. So I would implore the board, I'm not finished. I would implore that the board look at it from a multi-year perspective, which is what our mid-year review looked at, and we looked at it as a 5-year span, and we are on pace for that plan that we put together. As you know, I'm a planner, so I look forward multiple years, and making fluctuations when we don't need to from a fiscal perspective. But that ultimate decision is this body's decision.
And I mean, we're saving money with not having substitutes in and everything else. And like I said, it's a hard time. People are going to lose their homes again. And right now, if we don't have to use the levy, let's leave it where it was. You said it was a 0% increase, but we're asking people to put more money into our budget of $58 million. And the same thing with the contingency budget. We've really taken nothing out of that budget if this budget goes down. I mean, do we actually need, for the summer school, do we need the $10,000 in the budget? Can't we take that out? Do we need the extra $7,000 in clubs? Can we take that out? We really
I'm proposing, yes. I'm proposing that the budget stay as is. Anything that does not get spent ultimately becomes fund balance that this board can then decide what we're going to allocate that money towards, which will be done with our allocation for fund balance. So I'd like to hear from others.
I have three questions. This is Karen.
Yeah, Karen, just 1 second. I just want to wrap up that one thing about the cap.
Sure.
You know, we've had this conversation. We have it every year. I know John sat on both sides and got to listen to me tell this story about the cap. The problem we have to remember was anytime we never want to have to pierce the cap, obviously. We want to stay under the cap every year. But we have to stay close to the cap because there are so many unknowns and variables that we, from a financial standpoint, are responsible for. Every time you don't stay near the cap, you are then saying you either are going to cut program
Right.
or other things and not have fund balance. We're in a very good position financially that we do have fund balance and we know we're saving money this year because of this hardship we're going through. And depending on what happens, if everything gets worked out between the state and the federal government and it becomes more aid and we get ready to set the tax levy once this is all known, we can make a decision to do more with fund balance at a later date. But we're not there yet, and it would be fiscally irresponsible to make any kind of major decisions with as little information as we have. So, Karen, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I just have three. They're basically clarification questions. It's very simple. So my first one is about the contingency budget. Let's say, and I'm worried like Joanne with the economy and with people being out of work that they'll vote no to the budget. So if they vote no, and that's when the contingency budget goes into effect for the $58,266,338. So if that goes in, it's about $100,000 less. So what would be cut from the budget if the contingency goes in? Would it be the three extras, the athletic trainer, the clubs, and the programs? Because that's about $100,000. So would that be what was cut, or what would?
That's a great question.
Yeah, what would actually be cut?
Legally, it's spelled out very clearly. We can't spend money on equipment.
Okay.
And
we have just shy of $100,000 worth of equipment in the budget, all told. So
Okay.
basically, that would cover the preponderance of the cut to get to a contingency budget.
Okay, so those other things then would be fine. It's the equipment then that would be cut. Okay, so my second question, this is more a clarification question. I know the tax levies, like we doing with the estimated amount for increase for a $200,000 home are proposed, and they're best educated guesses. So I'm just going to do a little math here. So let's say I live in the town of Marlboro, and I have a $300,000 home. I'm looking at a proposed best guess tax increase of about $160.50. Would that be about right? I mean, we won't know till the end of August, but that's based on last year's, and that's what we're looking at? Okay.
yes, that's based on our best guess and all that information, that's what it is. We always know that some people's values go up, some people's values go down. We have this whole issue with, they haven't set the equalization rates yet. So it never really winds up being truly those numbers, but those are the only numbers we have at this point. This is the problem
Right.
with the way the budget cycle is set compared to when assessments are done.
Right,
And I have to be honest, Newburgh side does always get higher
right.
than the rest of it. So when you're
Plus side
sitting
this
there,
year,
huh?
But
A
this
plus
year,
side this year, Karen, a plus side this year, Karen, is that last year, well, the 1920 school year was the last year of the devaluation of Roaston. So Roaston
okay.
had been devaluing for the last 6 years at $15 million a year. So that's something that won't be hitting that reduction in the assessment roll won't be hitting for the 2021 year because it's done. So that's hopefully helpful.
Sounds good. I just wanted to be clear on that. And then my third question, final question, is about the ballot with the trustees. So if anybody's interested, they just have to send that email. But the candidates, like the two candidates who already had in their petitions with their signatures, I believe it's Connors and Hacker, they're all set. They don't have to send in an email. They're all set, correct?
Correct. I confirmed that with our board clerk, Cindy Storno, yesterday.
Okay. So, and then when will we know, like, who's actually running for the board? When will we know, like, all the candidates, who they are?
Tuesday morning.
If not Monday night, then Tuesday morning. We'll
Oh,
have
great. So it'll
Monday-
go right away then, right after the 10th.
Monday night at 5 o'clock, the ballots have to, or the
So,
declarations have to be in by. So by Monday night or Tuesday morning.
will you let the board know?
Of course.
I missed that at Chopped. I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Joanne just asked if he was going to let the board know, and Mike said he would make sure that we were notified.
Oh, yeah, no, I just was curious, like, I didn't know how that process worked. Like, this is my first time doing this, so that's why I was just making sure. And I have to also just say as a comment, where you looked at the major cost drivers, some things you just can't help. Salaries always go up, payroll goes up, federal taxes go up, healthcare insurance is like a major driver.
That's an everyday thing.
Right,
Those are the
and,
ones
it just, it just looked really good, the way we're keeping costs down, debt services, and I thought it was interesting that the ERS, TRS expenses went down. Is there a reason why that would have gone down, or?
Because last year's increase was much higher, so this is a smaller increase.
Oh, okay, so that makes sense, it just was because it's up at 100,000. Other than that, it looks pretty sound.
It was beneficial on the ERS side more than the TRS side. But yeah, I mean, both of those go on a multi-year swing based on the typically the S&P performance.
Oh, okay.
So as the S&P goes, so goes the TRS and ERS contributions over a period of time.
Sounds good, thank you very much for the clarification.
John Cantone, look like you turn your microphone on. You have a question?
No, just a statement to the conversation that took place before is, the levy represents basically refueling the fund balance that we're going to use and appropriate towards this budget like we do every year, right? To your point about what we talk about every year is we keep that as a balance. The money that we spend out of the fund balance, we put some back, we stay under the cap, but we get close enough to the cap so that we can keep that balance every year. Because otherwise, unfortunately, the way this tax cap works, it's really a misnomer calling it a tax cap because it implies that you can just get 2% every year. But in fact, if you go down below that cap, so does your cap the following year, since it's a calculated value, which is kind of absurd. And I wish the legislators would go address that, among other things. But to the bigger point is, right now, we are such in an unknown position. Right? We can only go forward with the budget knowing what the state aid declarations are at this point. It's wide open what's going to happen. And we really do have to hold on to the revenue stream and potentially the additional cost savings that we're incurring right now, because we're going to potentially have to apply all that to the budget or the actual expenditures next year. Right, because we don't know how much.
So we're going to have.
So let me capitalize on that too, because if there is a reduction in our aid, and if you look at there's basically three large revenue streams: taxes, state aid, and other revenues. And there's a big number in there in what we appropriate. So if there's a reduction in our state aid because of whatever happens with this pandemic and costs associated with the state, and the federal government doesn't produce a stimulus that bails out states, or whatever the politics are of that. If there is a reduction, let's say there's a $500,000 reduction, just making the number up, we would have to either cut program and expenditures to the tune of $500,000 or appropriate an additional $500,000. And that was where we've been trying to, in this school year, decline that curve of how much we appropriate on an annual basis. So in the current year, we've appropriated $4.6 million. In the 2021, we're expecting to appropriate $3.4 million. So that's part of that discussion and that strategy that we discussed back in the middle of the winter to reduce our dependence on appropriating fund balance. And I think that would be something that we want to continue out over the next couple of years. At the same time, we don't want to get too low there, because that also is our cushion. So that is an amount of money that we can use in an emergency. It's the rainy day fund. So like I said, we just need to keep the powder dry right now and not use any of the ammunition we have in stabilizing a budget when we don't need to. At some point in time, we may need to. But right now, a threat from the governor at a press conference has not turned into a document that any of us have received as a superintendent with a change in our aid package. It's all for political theater between the federal government, the city of New York, and the state of New York. So we're just going to be pawns in the game for now until they resolve how they're going to fund us through this pandemic. And our kids deserve quality programming, and I believe that this budget puts together a sound fiscal program. You know, we just had our Moody's rating and the Standard & Poor's or Moody's rating. We had a fantastic rating as we moved into the bonding. When we rebonded those bonds, we actually ended up better to a couple $100,000 over the course of the 10 years. So all signs are green right now, folks. We're in a good place. I want to keep us stable, keep our programs in place, and monitor that spending as closely as we possibly can. Long-term picture here.
John Morrow, any questions? James Kuha, any questions?
No, actually, I like the budget. I'm glad we're finally at the zero we've been asking for years, so I support it the way it is.
Okay. Susan, any questions?
Yes, I actually have a simple question. Did you mention how the ballots will actually be distributed to the voters?
They're going to be mailed to every registered voter. Every registered voter is going to get one mailed to them. They'll have the ballot, and then they'll have a self-return postage-paid envelope for it to come back to us. And anybody who is a qualified voter can notify the district, go to our budget page, and you'll be able to, if you're a qualified voter but haven't registered or don't know if you're registered, you can go there and submit a request, take the form, submit a request to get a ballot, because the governor in his infinite wisdom with the executive order, you don't even need to be a registered voter anymore. You just need to qualify to be a voter, and you can do it at any point as long as you get the request in time that we can mail you the ballot so that you can get it back in time. They've made it pretty simple this year.
Okay, thanks. Aside from that, go ahead.
And we do have a team that's working right now in district with with NTS, a contractor that we've used for years for keeping our poll books together. And that team, led by our district clerk, is really spearheading this monumental task of, in such a short time, putting together all of the required notices, mailings, and ballots. And we'll turn it around. We'll get it done right. We'll get it done professionally with integrity, and we'll produce a result that we can all stand behind. And I thank Cindy and Rose's team really for doing a fantastic job with getting us to the point where we are just in a couple of days. I mean, just literally in a couple of days. So we'll be good for this election, and I'm proud of our team for it.
Well, Mike, on behalf of the board, yourself and Rose, Ann, and everybody that's been working on pulling this together, we know it's been a very, very hectic time and a crazy time. Nothing like we've ever seen before. He's done an amazing job of getting us to this point. So I just want to say thank you. And with that, I've got to make a motion to suspend public comments on the agenda items. The two items that are on there, based on the current executive order from the governor, we're going to be suspending that. Can I get a motion?
Karen, it's by motion.
Okay, second, James Kuha. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, so the motion carries 7-0. Okay, so we'll move on to the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves the contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. Personnel actions, CSE, CPSE recommendations, health and welfare contracts, OU BOCES Cooperative Transportation Services for the 2021 school year, official Board of Ed meeting minutes for April 16th, 2020. Can I have a motion? John Marrow, second. James Kuha. Any discussion?
I have a question, I would like to, on the personnel agenda, just with everything that's going on right now, is there a way that we can separate the summer?
If you look at your agenda, Joanne, it's not part of this.
Okay,
I already separated it out for you.
You would
Okay.
request it on Monday, so it was separated.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Any
So
other-
I'm getting lost, because I don't have my iPad right now. I'm going off on your paper, and I'm kind of like,
Oh, is that where that's where it's separated, online versus the paper?
No, the paper one we got today's got it separated.
yeah, it's got it separated, but I wasn't sure.
Mine says approval of the following items and includes personnel recommendations.
Yeah, but the summer one is separated. If you look further down, you'll see there's a recommended action.
Oh,
Item E. On the recommended actions.
Okay, and now the D is in there, the data privacy officer
got it.
is in that one, correct? Frank?
No, that's under recommended actions.
On the recommended action, we're just doing
That's what I just
personnel.
You're
Okay,
on consent right now. Yeah.
We're on the consent agenda.
okay. All right, I'm good, never mind.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, I'll call the roll. Joanne Reed. You got to turn your microphones on, everybody.
Yes,
Karen Brooks,
Yes.
John Marrow,
Yes.
John Cantone,
Yes.
James Kuha,
Yes,
Susan Horton,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Now we'll move on to recommended actions. Can we really do I guess we got to do B first, don't we, before we do A? Adopt the budget before we do the report card?
Oh, you know what? We switched it online. Didn't we switch it online? Did you have the paper one in front of you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So,
So the property tax report card's last.
Yeah, we did.
So the recommended actions, budget adoption, resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, adopt the proposed 2020-2021 school year budget in the amount of $58,363,438 as presented. Can I have a motion?
Karen, I motion.
Karen Brooks, a second.
I second
John
it. No.
Marrow. Any discussion?
Yes, Frank, actually, I was going to say something earlier. I just didn't get an opportunity. You know, I hear Joanne's concerns, and I know, like you mentioned, I think it's really important to reiterate that with the decrease in expenses due to our current situation, that money that we have not used, that will go to a fund balance, and then we have a clearer picture of what's happening with the state, then we as a board will decide what to do with that fund balance. And I also appreciate the fact that we are at a 0% increase for the total projected budget.
Thank you. Okay, everybody can turn, any other question, comments? Okay, everybody make sure the microphones are on, please. Joanne Reed.
I'm having a hard time with this, I'm sorry. Can you go to, I just,
Yeah, yes or no, Joanne?
I'm gonna say no.
Okay,
I have people out of work and people hungry.
Karen Brooks.
Yes.
John Marrow.
Yes.
John Cantone.
Yes.
James Kuha.
yes,
Susan Horton,
Yes.
and myself, yes. One second, I'll go back. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, adopts the property tax report card for the 2021-2022 as presented. Can I have a motion? James Kuha, can I have a second? Karen Brooks, any discussion on the report card adoption? Okay, I'll call the roll. Joanne Reed?
Okay, yes, because,
Karen Brooks?
Yes.
John Marrow?
Yes.
John Cantone? James Kuha?
Yes.
Susan Horton?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion passed 7-0. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, moves the Board of Education business meeting from May 21st, 2020 to May 28th, 2020. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Karen, second. Joanne Reed. Any discussion? Okay, I'll call the roll. If everybody turn their microphones on. Joanne Reed,
yes,
Karen Brooks,
Yes.
John Marrow,
Yes.
John Cantone,
Yes.
James Kuha,
Yes.
Susan Horton,
Yes.
and myself, yes. Data Privacy Officer, resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve Assistant Superintendent Robin Hecht as the Data Privacy Officer for the 2019-2020 school year. Is that right?
Should be
Mike?
20.
Yeah, yes, we have to have
2021.
someone, no, we have to have someone appointed immediately, so we'll fill out the paperwork and get that sent up. It's, the due date's here, coming up in the next, week or so. And then that will be a designation that will be on the annual reorg meeting every July.
Okay, so this is just because of a change. Okay.
Brand new regulation that kicked in. Karen's probably very familiar with it. Yeah, that's a brand new regulation that kicked in. It's really in Robin's wheelhouse, something that she does a lot with, but it's really a team effort too. But there has to be one person designated as the officer, and she's that person.
right, and that's something that we
Can I have-
talked about.
We'll get to the discussion in a minute. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Joanne, second. Karen. Okay, go ahead, Joanne.
I'm sorry. Yes, this was something that when I went to conference, that was also talked about quite a bit. So I think it's a good thing and more of a safety issue too, with everything going on.
Any other discussion? Microphones on, please. Joanne Reed,
Yes,
Karen Brooks,
Yes.
John Marrow,
Yes.
John Cantone,
Yes.
James Kuha,
Yes.
Susan Horton,
Yes.
and myself, yes. The motion passes 7-0. The next will be the Athletic Director Summer Months. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve John O'Donnell for Athletic Director per diem workdays not to exceed 26 days per summer for the period of July 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. We're not going to live to 2023. 2023. Can I have a motion? James
Your
Kuhar.
mouth, the guy's ears on that. I think I want to live that long.
Okay, discussion.
Before we get into a discussion, can you just do a quick summary of the history on this? I know it's been around for a long time, and when you see it for the first time, it looks unusual because it's the only administrator that actually gets per diems for summer. But I know there's history in it, and I see the references to the contract. So just a little refresh there. Could somebody just
Sure.
summarize that?
Sure,
Go
so
ahead.
she is, it's not an administrator, actually. She's a teacher, so she's in the teachers' union. This position's been that constituted position for years now, the athletic director piece. So teacher contract doesn't allow for summer work unless there's a stipend to it. And this has been in place for years to have her work up to 26 days based on the work that she has to do to get ready for the upcoming season. Actually, really the upcoming school year.
And she did that work, I guess, exceeds more than the average teacher or other, department chair or whatever that's sort of in a similar place. I know
This is all, everybody that works in the summer that's in the teachers union gets paid additional money for the work that they do in the summer. So the teachers only their salary is for basically September 1 to June 30th. So any work that's done in the July and August time period has to be covered from some other work. So for example, work that Robin has a lot of work done in the summertime with curriculum work. And there's some additional pay that we give for our curriculum rate for curriculum work in the summertime. So,
is that true for teachers who come in and get their classroom ready and all that, or that's a little more?
no, that's different. Yeah, that's a little different. Yeah, no, this is when we hire people that we want to have work in the summer reading program or the summer school program or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and historically, at least, 3 years ago, we set it to a 3-year period. And then prior to that, for a couple of years, it was a back and forth, and we came up with a number of days maximum.
It was 20.
When we came up with that, and then the superintendent monitors that and signs off on it based on the needs of the district.
Okay. What always throws me off on that is the title of athletic director, but as Mike reminded me, it's not an administrative position, where many administrators
Right, in some
do have
districts
work
it is.
hours in the summer, so balance of that threw me off.
Right, in some districts, it's an administrative position, and in some districts that are on the smaller size, it's a part-time position between phys ed and athletic director work.
Okay, I'm good, thanks.
And this goes back, John, for about 35 years, I believe. This has been a big discussion through the years, even before our AD that is there now, this has been going on.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, so I'm a little concerned because one, with the pandemic, we don't know if we're coming back in this fall. We don't know what's going on. So not that I want to deny anybody, but at this point, can we table it until we find out a little bit more what's going on? We still have June. We can bring it back in July. I mean, to approve it, and then what happens if we don't have football sports?
Well,
I'm not denying anybody anything.
because Joanne, it says not to exceed 26 days. Whether or not.
So what happens if?
Joe, can I finish, please? Now, nobody's going to work if the superintendent doesn't believe that there's work for them to do. So it's just like anything else. This is a not to exceed authorization for that time period. If the superintendent has determined that because there's going to be no fall sports and there's no need, not that, please, nobody think that I know that there's no fall sports. I did not say that there's no fall sports.
Right.
I'll be heartbroken if we have to go 2 seasons with no sports.
Oh, my God.
Hypothetically, if that were the case and the superintendent determined that there was no need to do that, then there'd be nobody working for that time period. But that.
Right, keep in mind too, that the summertime work is not just for the fall. It's the work preparing for the entire school year. So that's when the bulk of ordering and preparing is taken care of for a significant portion of the year. So it's really preparing for the year. It's not just the fall.
Okay, so my question, why can't that be?
Done?
Okay, so my question is, why can't that be done now? Because you should know what you should be able to order. If you need baseballs, basketballs, football, soccer, you should be able to do
Can't do
that.
any of that right now, Joanne. The budget doesn't kick in, the new budget doesn't kick in until July 1st. So my recommendation stands as is.
See, to me, that doesn't make sense because it should, so we're paying now an AD stipend or an AD salary, but we have no sports going on right now, and none of this work can be done now?
Can I
That's
just,
what you're telling me,
can I
Mike?
just add something to the conversation? Joanne, just for some clarification, just like the principals are meeting with the principal groups on a weekly basis, the athletic departments throughout the section meet constantly to decide, through this pandemic, can we come back? How can we modify the schedule if we come back on this day? Can we modify if we come back on this day? And through the summer, they're going to be meeting as well to set forth a plan for modification of games if need be, just like we're going to make plans for modifications of schools if need be. So the athletic director, they do, like principals and other administrators, meet with their groups on a very consistent basis, and they won't know what to do until the time comes. So we need to be poised to have someone in place to make those decisions on behalf of Marlboro.
So if they have a meeting every day, we're gonna pay that for 26 days, for an hour or 2 hours.
It's so much more
Is that
complicated.
what you're telling me?
It's so much more complicated than that, Ms. Reed. It's a complicated area, athletics, and we have a storied, fantastic athletic program, and this is something we need to do to continue that. So you may disagree with me, and I respect that, but I disagree that we should make a change here. It is up to 26 days. If there is not a need for 26 days worth of work, she won't work 26 days. But
Again.
if we need 26 days, she'll work 26 days. That's the nature of the work there.
I just think that we should
piece of
take
the pie.
this for another month. I do. With everything that's going on.
The process would be
we're
then
not
for
in
you to make,
school.
Joanne, the process would be then for you to make a motion to table.
Okay, well then, I would like to make a motion to table to find out, just to see where the governor's going and how we're going forward with this. Because, it's not gonna matter if we wait another 30 days to do this, is it? Everybody? In the meanwhile, we can have guidance from the state.
It is in the fact that we go through this same conversation every several years when this item comes up, and we, as the majority of the board, have consistently felt that it is in the best interest of the district to do this. And I respect your opinion to being different, and that's fine. But, you've made a motion. Is there a second?
Okay.
Having heard no second, we'll move on. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
This is Karen, I have a question. I'm just looking at this, and I just want to make sure I understand it. So I totally get that this is outside of her teacher job, and that she's doing this as the athletic director for the summer. It's just this summer, right? Because the paper says that in front of us says July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023. So shouldn't it just be...
It's the same 3 year, we've been doing this 3 years in a bunch. Like we just did the other appointments. She was just appointed the athletic director for 3 years.
Correct.
Under the personnel actions.
Right,
and,
right.
And the PE director. So we've always done all three of these in the same cycle. And again, it's not to exceed 26 days.
Each summer?
Each summer.
Correct.
Okay, now I understand.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Microphone's on and I'll call the roll. Joanne Reed.
No, I can't.
Karen Brooks.
Yes.
John Marrow.
Yes.
John Cantone.
Yes.
James Kuha.
Yes.
Susan Horton.
Yes.
And myself, yes. The motion passed 6-1. We'll move on to old business. Does anybody have any old business? Any new business? And I think this would be a perfect time, Joanne, for to talk about the item you sent the email about for teacher appreciation.
Yes. I definitely would like to thank all the teachers for everything that they do for our students. They've done drive-by, they do Zoom, or not Zoom, but Google Classroom. It's been wonderful to see them interact. They have the kids doing posters. So our teachers have gone up beyond everything, and I wanted to say thank you to them. I think that they've done an outstanding job.
Anybody else want to add on to what Joanne had to say?
I have to agree with her. The teachers really have brought themselves to the challenge, and they've just been a wonderful support for the kids. And I just want to thank them for all the work that they're doing. They're working very hard, harder than ever with this technology, and so many have grown so much. I just want to say thank you.
John, I see you turn your microphone on.
Boy, you're watching closely today. Yes, I just add to the fact that in the last couple of months, I've been very, very active with the teachers in terms of asking questions and, checking on how grades look on the portal when we started doing that, and making sure I understand what my son or my daughter is telling me is it really accurate, and so on and so forth. But I've been getting some very, very, very fast responses, knowing and at unusual hours too. Like I usually get up earlier than most to get and start sending some emails, and I've gotten emails back before what would be their usual start of the day. Same thing on the tail end of the day, beyond the 2:30, 3 o'clock time for middle and high school. So they're clearly keeping an eye and very focused on making sure people are comfortable with what's happening. At least my experience is quick to respond to me. And every time I talk to them, I make sure they know my hat that I'm wearing when I'm talking to them is the parent hat, not the board hat or any other hat I might wear. But I definitely have seen that there's been a whole concerted effort across the board to get information out, to respond, and have been very helpful, because I've been confused a couple of times at some of the things I've seen, just because you guys are changing quickly, and the grading system just changed, right? And the portal just started getting used again, and a lot of those kinds of things. So I'm definitely very much appreciative of that. I think a lot of people are at different levels of anxiety. I'm a little more comfortable than most because I'm informed, and my kids are luckily doing well with this, but still, you all have questions. We all have a little bit of anxiety at some level. Just saying, is what they're doing going to matter? And are they doing enough? Are they graded properly? Is it going to be a good measure for them? Right? But every time I reached out to anybody, teacher or administrator for that matter, principals too, they respond quickly. So I'm very thankful for that. And you can tell that they're on their game, because if they weren't watching, I'm sure they don't have time to watch email all day long, but they seem to be making a point to go check it enough to be responsive. So my appreciation out there for sure.
Thank you, Don. John Morrow or James, anything? Okay.
No, just much like John, I've been watching since the beginning, because obviously my daughter is going through this as well. And from the beginning to now, we've seen a drastic improvement of how they're doing it. So just like everybody else, my appreciation, it's definitely gotten a lot better. And it's just, she's actually adapting well and doing good with it.
Great. Susan?
You've all said very nice things. I definitely echo the sentiments. I'm very appreciative. I think it's been, for the amount of time that, we quickly had to move into action, into a plan that no one could have imagined. I'm very appreciative of the learning the instruction that's coming in, the learning that's going out, how that's balancing, and, not only what it means to our children as students, but again, like I said last meeting, really how it's shaping them as human beings to face things in the world. And I've gotten tremendous support from the district, and I'm very appreciative of that, as I know many others are.
Thank you. And again, like everybody else has said, our daughter has graduated, but it's amazing to see the things that are going on. I'm a social media hound. I'm on all of them, and to be able to like the things and see the things and be able to follow what's going on throughout the district, our teachers, and we can't say enough to appreciate everything they've been doing, especially this week. I know you're missing out on those the time together with the students, which is I know is an amazing strain, not only on the students but the teachers, and we can't do it justice without being able to have those special celebrations in the building, but all of us on the board wanted to say thank you. You know, it's also Nurses Appreciation Day yesterday, so just to thank all the nurses in all our buildings and all the work that everybody's doing to get us through this. Does anybody?
I have to say, Frank, my heart grows it just glows with pride. When I hear these things and I see what teachers are doing, I know they're working hard. I'm so proud when I hear all these things. So thank you so much. And I'm sure that they are very appreciative, and I'm so proud to be associated with them.
Well, we're not as technologically advanced as I know the administrators did a nice video and a different school did nice videos. Joanne had recommended we do something. I thought, well, this is the closest we're going to get to doing a video. So there's an opportunity for all of us to talk, and it'll be up on the YouTube page, and hopefully the teachers will all see it, and we can go from there.
And I just
have any new items?
Yeah, I have a couple more things, but I just want to again say thank you to the teachers. I'm very proud to be part of Marlboro Central School District. So my other couple of things I have is, I've had people ask me if the food program will go throughout the summer.
The food program for the summer will be the same as in the past. Ms. Heck probably can speak to it better than I can.
Well, they're asking me about
Ms. Heck is going to speak to it.
Thank you.
So at the present time, we are applying for that grant, and I believe that we are securing that summer grant that we did have for the summer school. So we're just waiting on further direction to see if we can open that up to everyone else. In addition to that, we do take donations, so that backpack program will continue.
We're just not sure at this point whether it's going to be the same as now, where it's every day during the course of the summer. So
Right,
we're not certain about that yet.
Right.
Yeah, because I have community members asking me, because they do go to the Snack Shack, if we were going to continue that.
Or just, it's not us, it's a funded program, so if the program is funded, we'll staff it and feed. So we'll see. It depends upon if it's funded or not.
All right, thank you. My other one is, I've had parents ask me, how do they get to clean out the school lockers? Are we going to set up days that the kids can go clean out their lockers? And when that does happen,
I can speak to that to help you out. The principals are actually finalizing, or probably finalized today, their plan that they're going to be presenting to me tomorrow, so that what I'm calling is a property exchange. So we can take in property that's the school districts, textbooks, things like that, and also give back property that is in lockers and desks. So I'll be hearing that plan tomorrow morning, and we'll see. What really is going to happen is at some point in time in the next several weeks, teachers are going to be coming back into buildings to close out their classrooms and empty lockers and desks and all that kind of stuff, and then we have to get that stuff back to students. So we're in process, working on the plans, and stay tuned, as I always say.
okay. Because that was the other question. Parents wanted to know, do we have to hand back the Chromebooks? And my answer was, I don't know.
Stay tuned. I'm hearing the plan tomorrow.
Okay. So then the other one was, when this is all said and done and we get the schools all cleared out of all clothing, whatever, and the custodians start cleaning it, will staff be allowed back in, or are we going to lock it down, and then once the buildings are clean, we're going to lock them down? This way there's nothing else, because after, I have to tell you, we have a wonderful custodian staff, and they're cleaning.
Agreed. I have an answer for you.
sanitizing.
I have an answer for you. So undetermined right now, because there's a lot of different moving parts here. There's summer cleaning is a 2-month adventure. So it's not just a quick sanitizing. It's literally stripping out the entire building. The day of graduation, the day after the kids move out, hallways are filled with desks and chairs. Plus, we've got significant construction projects beginning. So this is not going to be a idle time for our buildings this summer. We will make sure that we adhere to all governor's executive orders and social distancing rules. And that does add a complexity onto construction, adds a complexity onto cleaning. So, there really won't be a different summer. Cleaning our schools and preparing our schools is essential work. So,
And then because I do want to give a shout out to all the custodians and Larry's staff, because I have to tell you, they've done a wonderful, wonderful job keeping the buildings clean, getting it done. The grounds look wonderful outside also. So I do have to say thank you for all of that. My last question is, which I already emailed you, Mike, was, again, the kindergarten screening, because again, I'm seeing more and more questions starting to pop up on Facebook. Parents don't know what to do, and all I said is just hold on, we have a plan. It will be revealed shortly.
Elementary's working on that plan as we speak, and as soon as they have it all laid out, it's a complex piece, because there's, it's a complex piece, but there will be a plan, and it will be laid out when it's all ready, whether it happens this summer or whether it happens this fall. They're working on it. Ms. Walsh and her crew are working on it. They're working on it.
Because some parents are like, oh, maybe they won't let our kids go to school. Then you have other parents saying, no, they're all going to school. Then you have, and I'm like, everybody just hold on, the district is working on it.
Let me make sure I'm clear so that there's facts out there. Everybody that's registered and is a resident and of age comes to school in September. The governor will determine what that school looks like, so that's an undetermined piece. But that has nothing to do with the screening at all. The screening helps us with understanding their readiness and identifying needs. And that will take place. We just don't know when, and they're working on the plan for that.
All right, thank you for answering all the questions.
You're welcome.
Joanne, it's funny when you talk about Larry and his crew. We were driving up 9W the other day, and we came through Middle Hope, and we were commenting on the fact that it almost looked like that the school that's not ours on 9W maybe was vacated and overgrown and really looked very bad. And as we got several miles up the street into the Marlboro School District, we realized, well, it's just because they're not mowing the lawn or taking care of them right now. Ours looked amazingly different comparatively. So, anybody else have any other new items or other items? Okay, we have a proposed executive session to discuss contracts and legal matters. There'll be no action we don't have any action, Mike, right? Not after? We'll have no action after the executive session.
No action.
Can I have a motion to go into executive session? Karen Brooks, second James Kuha. Thank you everybody for attending our meeting. Reminder that our next meeting is not until the 28th of May at 7:30 p.m. It'll also be our budget hearing. And so follow the website so you have ways to submit any questions that you have, please. And again, if anybody is looking to run for the Board of Education, please make sure that you either go online and fill out the form and get it in, or send an email to Cindy Storno on the district website prior to 5 p.m. on Monday to appear on the ballot. Thank you, everybody. All in favor in going to exec? Any opposed? Motion carried 7-0. The board members don't go anywhere. Mr. Bakatsias, if you could